NCAA men's basketball tournament begins with two of the first four play-in games tipping off tonight. Then the real madness begins around 12:15 p.m. on Thursday. Creighton taking on Louisville. I think they're both eights. And, of course, you can bet on all the games. Join us now to break it all down. DraftKings CEO Jason Robbins. Looking good. I like it. Is that the Blue Jet? What am I looking at up there? I can't tell.
It's the Duke Blue Devils.
Oh, it's the Blue Devils. I couldn't see. Yeah, and he'll be back, right, for the first game. Do you know, Cooper Flagg?
I'm hoping, yeah, it looks like it. We'll see what happens, but I like their chances. They have a great team this year.
They do. How much of a bump do you see, Jay? I mean, you always get... I might bet a little more during March Madness, but I bet all the time. On a percentage basis, what do you expect to see, just in terms of activity?
Well, I mean, March Madness, it's not quite the Super Bowl, but it's similar. Like, if you're into betting, if you're into, this sort of thing, brackets, if you're a sports fan who likes action on the game, you're probably betting on March Madness. So it's a really important time for us. It's a great time for fans. There's so much going on. It used to be a tradition. I don't do it anymore, but when I was younger, I used to go to Vegas for the opening weekend every single year, and it was just awesome. I would sit down at the books, and there were just screens with games on everywhere, and you just have action on everything. It was the best. I loved it.
What is is there different things than just, straight up money line or, take the points, or I guess you do some parlays and under and over, but what else do you put in for March Madness that's unique to this week or the next 2 weeks?
Well, a lot of people are parlaying in the first round because there's so many games. So it's really popular for people to take the big favorites on the money line and then parlay them with some spreads that they like. So generally you see the number one seed money lines getting just paired up with any other games or any other bets that people like because they sort of feel like it's a great way to juice the odds because the one seeds almost never lose. And then obviously a lot of futures bets, people betting on who's going to win the tournament. Not surprisingly, Duke is getting the most bets and most handle, but lots of other teams, UConn was surprisingly, up there, I thought, even though obviously, Duke's the favorite this year. UConn has really had a great showing the last several years, so people are betting heavy on them. And I think there's a lot of teams that are going to surprise people. There's always some interesting stories. So a lot of times Cinderella bets become a big thing once there's a team that gets past the first round or two that people didn't expect, a lower seed. Typically people pile in on them. It's actually quite different. In most sports, people bet the favorites, but when there's a Cinderella story, people always bet on it in March Madness. Florida's been surging, too. And remember a couple years ago, Florida won. All of a sudden, they won it all, right? Yeah, exactly. Who do you like this year? Who do you got?
I bet on Auburn a few times. Every time I bet on Auburn, they lost. So I don't know. What did they lose? 5 out of 6 or something, or maybe 5 out of 7 recently. I mentioned Florida. Duke covered the spread almost every time I bet on them, Jason. So, and then I didn't know whether to bet on them or not without Cooper Flagg. But then they kept doing it, even with. I would have thought UConn until the other night. I don't know. They got beat pretty. Yeah. What about St. John's? Patino is a phenom.
There's a lot of good teams this year. St. John's is another one that, kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, great coach, so definitely a lot of good teams this year. And one of the things I love, too, is DraftKings. We have some free-to-play brackets. So if you're filling out a bracket, you might as well come and do it. We got ones for up to $50,000 that are free-to-play. We have men's and women's. We have second-chance brackets. So come check those out. They're in the pools section of our sportsbook app.
Hey, Jason, NIL, the name, image, and likeness money has changed things so much. You hear some well-known coaches kind of complain about how it's impossible to keep a team around, that half of their players, including what UConn's coach Hurley said, that you got half of your players at any point have already gone into are going to go into the portal, and they've already had conversations with other teams. Does that make it tougher to try and figure out the betting line on some of these teams, too? Because you don't have the same amount of time to kind of see who's gelling, be able to understand a team. It feels like there's a lot more in play at any point in time.
Well, there's no doubt that the game is changing in college sports and NIL and all the other things going on. So, it's hard. But I do feel like the tournament, everybody gets up for it. This is, it's one of those special moments in sports where you're on the national stage, and even if you have aspirations to go into the NBA, this is a time where you can really make a name for yourself and go up in the draft. So I feel like everybody's coming to play the same as they ever did. And, obviously the game is changing, but this is one of those moments that's still great about college sports.